So on that note, I would like to introduce you all to Krystle.
Hello, hi everyone. Krystle McGilvery, you almost said it right.
No problem. Yeah, I'm dyslexic, so I tend to mispronounce things a lot. So, okay, Krystle, my first question for you is, would it be possible to tell us about the businesses that you currently run?
Yeah, so I kind of am involved in 3 different things at the moment. I'll talk about them in order of size, maybe. The first one is called My BFD. So initially, this business is focused on social housing residents. So it fundamentally is a financial education platform, helping tenants get educated on financial literacy, and also tackling the issue with rent arrears. So it's a massive problem right now, and obviously, of course, right now even more of a problem given COVID. But even before that existed, there's been so many studies and research into how to tackle rent arrears in social housing. But the platform that we've created can actually be used across the board, not just for social housing tenants. It could be for tenants anywhere, people anywhere. So one of the things we're kind of working on right now would be for the general public, but targeting specific key areas, with certain demographics. Also, I am a personal finance coach and a business finance consultant. So I help people kind of get started in business, get the foundations all set up, using my knowledge from being an accountant for over 10 years. And then personal finance, I've been teaching maths and finance for many years. I think over 15 years on the math side. Of course, I love that stuff. And then also there's another business I'm involved in called Untitled. So that is working with corporates to educate their employees about financial literacy. So my whole space, as I'm sure you can tell, is all about finance education. It's a real passion of mine.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So before we do jump into any financial type questions, that's something that strikes me already. You're running 3 businesses to an extent, as well as other projects. What does a typical day look like for you?
I'm juggling. So I think it's to do with my character type. I like to be busy. I like to be challenged. I like to be constantly on the go. So I tend to bite off quite a lot. But as my projects are getting bigger, oh, there's a bit of an echo there. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, that's good. As my projects are getting bigger, I'm learning to prioritize and literally say, right, I'm parking that because I don't have the time. I'm realizing that, if you have too many things going on at once, you spread yourself too thin and you're not delivering the best that you can deliver, which I can't have. So a typical day, I have a knee problem at the moment, but usually I get up and I work out, and then after the usual stuff, I dive into work. I focus on my to-do list that I would have set the night before, and I work my way through that. I've recently taken on a habit of looking at my emails later in the day and kind of tackling the big task at the start, and trying to work on divvying up my different businesses throughout the week, so I have a day focused on a particular business. Otherwise it's just too much to move between different businesses and reposition your mind. But I do love it, so it's a good challenge, I think, for me to have.
Perfect. Thank you, Krystle. I'm going to vary it between talking about your business specifically, audiences from the questions from the audience rather, and financial questions. So just for a minute to switch lanes for a financial question. Many entrepreneurs tend to struggle with raising funds for their companies. Is there any advice that you would give them?
So everything I've done is self-funded. 2 of the businesses, so Money Intelligence and BFD, is with 2 other people, well, 1 other person each. So we've all gone in it together. My business coaching, finance coaching, business consultancy is my own, and it's not much, in terms of startup costs required. So it's all self-funded. And even if you are going to go for funding, I'm aware that you're more attractive if you have some skin in the game. So if you've shown that you're invested and you really believe it, and as well, of course, you need to know your numbers. You need to understand and be fully confident about, the forecast of your business, what's required, the different variables, the parameters. You need to know that to be able to communicate effectively why you need the money, and how it will be recovered depending on the arrangement.
Okay, so having skin in the game is quite important when we're talking to investors.
It looks good. It makes you more attractive. It shows that you really are in it, you really believe it, which of course an investor would like to see.
Okay, what would that typically look like in the case of an entrepreneur?
What do you mean?
So when you say having skin in the game, what is an example of how the entrepreneurs in the audience can demonstrate that they are committed to their businesses?
So if you can invest some money, that would be good. Whether it's trialing out something or getting started, that would show that you've invested your time and effort and energy into the business. And I think as opposed to just having this great idea and saying, here, give me some money, it doesn't really show that you're in it if you're just trying to get some money from external sources, I think.
Okay, so invest in some of your own money as well as the effort you make, so demonstrate and actually building that company beforehand.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. So we have a question from Lydia, and she asks, what are the best practices when outsourcing your business accounts?
Okay, and it's funny, obviously I kind of touch base with accountants a lot. I don't do accountancy myself anymore because it's not as fun. There's more exciting things that I now like to do, but I keep hearing about people who are being investigated. I think last week I heard of 2 accountants that have been investigated for bad practice. So my first thing would be check them out, make sure they're qualified, make sure if you can get referrals, reviews, as opposed to going to someone blind if you can, in the first instance. And I think in terms of your working relationship, just be very clear about what you expect from them and how you will work, including things like meeting regularly, having check-ins, and back to what I said earlier about really having a good grip on your finances. I think a lot of people I speak to think that if they have somebody in finance doing their finances, that's okay, that they can dust their hands of it. And that's a no-no. You really need to know what's happening with your finances. And again, I heard somebody else speak, an old friend of mine, about his business, which has grown quite huge and, making lots of money, doing very well. And I think it got to a month where he was told by his FD that actually we can't pay payroll, on the day we're supposed to pay payroll because we don't have cash. And it came out that the FD wasn't managing the money properly and this owner of the business wasn't keeping an eye on that. So as much as you think you have an expert in that field, it is unfortunately your responsibility to really have a good grip and understand what's going on and keep an eye. So in terms of having external accountants, I think that's key. Keep a good relationship, regular communication, make sure they're qualified. Think about security, transferring data if it's going to be online, which is most likely now. I think they're the key things to consider.
Okay, so you mentioned having seeing them regularly and having regular conversations. How frequently would that look like? Is it monthly, quarterly, weekly?
I mean, initially my response would be it depends on the size and the transactions level of your business. I mean, depending on how far into the business you are, if transactions are quite high, you're sending quite a few invoices throughout the week, maybe every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, have a meet and just make sure everything's okay. And again, as well, it depends on what you're expecting them to do. If they're literally doing transactional bookkeeping type tasks, you might want to meet quite regularly. They may be looking at cash flow, make sure the bank is up to date, so maybe providing an update with you on the status of that. Or they may just be providing a quarterly or monthly kind of update on the status of the business. So it kind of depends on that as well. There are quite a few different areas of accounting that can be done.
Okay, and so just for the audiences, let's assume that they know nothing about accounting right now. What are those different areas that you just mentioned of accounting?
Yeah, so you have bookkeeping, so that's literally the transactional side of it. So that's, drawing up an invoice and invoicing your client. That is paying a supplier, so the actual bank transaction, making that payment from the bank account. That would be checking that, next level would be management accounts. So that's checking things like your cash flow, making sure you have enough money in the bank every week, every month, every day to pay your bills, managing that. Also your profit and loss, your balance sheet. I hope these terms people are familiar with, but I'm sure maybe balance sheet not so much. And we can go into that if need be. And then finally is financial reporting, which is what you need to send to Companies House and HMRC, depending on the structure of your business. So there's 3 different levels and they get more serious as they go up. So again, it depends on what you want this accountant to do. Some parts, for example, financial reporting will be year end. So that's not a regular monthly activity.
Okay, thank you for that. So switching gears again and going more
Yeah.
into your personal story, how did you actually get started in business for yourself?
I think, how did I get started? I mean, if I rewind, and I forgot this, I remember the other day I had a market stall in, is it Liverpool Street? I think I've always been entrepreneurial to some degree. My mother was, so I was raised in a house where, you know, she was self-employed. So it's always been there in front of me. And then I was teaching maths privately since I was 18, I think. So I've always been doing something on the side outside of my 9 to 5. And then with the whole, I guess, maths education, becoming an accountant, I started to see that people around me weren't as educated as I was when it came to finances, including personal finances. And I think naturally I just saw the real need for it and was like, I have to do something. This is what I have to do. And then obviously I've launched myself and said, okay, this is what I'm committing my time to. And I just dived in.
Okay, perfect. So we've got another question from the audience, and this one is from Christina, and she's asking, what is your best advice for getting out of a partnership that isn't like very promising?
Very promising as in the business doesn't look like it's going to be successful, or
I'm going to assume that she means that the relationship in the partnership isn't looking good. They don't currently have any type of founder agreement or anything like that in place either. But yeah, I think. Oh, sorry, one second, Christina. If you're still here and you've raised your hand, please do just come and clarify that question for us.
Hi, sorry. Yes. So basically, my question was in regards to when two people decide to found a company together, but then apart. So me has looked into the business idea a little bit more deeply, and I find myself just envisioning the idea now because I know it's very, very ambitious. And I know that at this point in my career, in my life, I think it will be very difficult to go on with it. And I also know that the person that I'm partnering with is going to be a little bit of a burden because I saw the patterns in the business activity and I can see myself doing all the hard work. So I would like to see how I can get out of that, basically, in a nice way.
Thank you, Christina.
Okay, so that sounds like it's a soft issue in that it's a communication issue. Is that right? So it doesn't sound like there's any kind of legal connection. There's no, if I'm wrong, no money has gone down. There's no, yeah. So it sounds like a conversation. And actually, I've experienced this. I've partnered up with people that actually it's not worked. And I think this is a separate conversation. This is a business general conversation. And I'm sure, Claude, you might have something to say on this. You know, who you go into business with, it's so important. You really need to know and make sure that they have the right attributes and skills and commitments and morals and vision for the business as you. I think people often go into business with a friend thinking that, sure, we're friends, it will work, but you have to kind of take a step back and make sure that they're the right people to go into business with. So I think with your situation, you have to have an honest conversation. Think about what you want for your life, what you want for your business, where you want to go. And if this is an obstruction, then you have to speak about it. You have to air your concerns, be honest, and however that conversation goes, stand tall when you know what you want. And yeah, I think it's almost easier than a legal bind, which causes those kind of restrictions.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. One advice I give to entrepreneurs all the time is that when you are going into business, you need to think of it, having a business partner rather, you need to think of, put as much effort into that decision as you would do into a marriage, in all honesty, because if I'm not mistaken, the average business partnership lasts longer than the average marriage currently. So it's a big commitment. And yes, when you do take things further, you will also be legally connected to as well. So it is a really important for you to be. While also say, in terms of going through separations in business, there was a book I highly recommend everybody to read, and it's called Crucial Conversations. In fact, that's a book I recommend everybody read in general. It's not just for business, but it will help you across the board. Farah, I see that your hand is raised. I will ask, is your question relating to what we're talking about now? If not, please do write it in the chat and we will come to that. Okay. While we're going through more questions, I do have another question for you, Krystle. And this one is from Faith, and her question is, are there any common mistakes that you see in small or new businesses that are easily avoidable?
Finance-wise?
Yeah, let's say finance. Yeah.
I think definitely on the cash flow side, that is a massive one. A lot of businesses struggle and fail because they haven't kept an eye on their cash flow. So some people haven't heard of this term, but cash flow is basically looking at and keeping a close eye on the inflow and the outflow of funds through your business. So I'll give you a quick example, and hopefully this is useful. If we think about, say you contract with a big client. I know that I used to work with one organization and we worked with BT, and I think they paid in 90 days. So say you have a job and they've agreed, we'll go ahead with this project or whatever it may be, but they are going to pay you in 90 days time. You are more than likely to incur costs, whether it's labor or materials, that you have to pay up front or within 30 days. So you've got to outlay money sooner than you're getting the money back. That creates a gap in your cash flow. What you usually need to do is have money up front to kind of buffer that space. Now, businesses tend not to pay attention to this. So they think, oh, we've got this great contract, however much money is coming in, but they're not paying attention to the timing. And that can cause a massive issue, because if you haven't got money, you can't sustain the business. So one area that I scream about, I talk about it a lot every time I do a presentation, that's the key thing that I dive into really deeply, is doing a cash flow forecast, which is literally you planning ahead for ideally the next 12 months and looking at your inflow and outflow of money. So if you think about it, you've got things that you have to pay regardless, such as, if we talk about a low level one, your Gmail subscription, your email account, or if you have, paid for account, basic low level things that you have to pay for. You need to make sure you've got either the funds in the bank account to pay it or the inflow of cash coming to cover it. And then also considering money you need to withdraw for your own expenses, your own pay. So I think that's one key area that I would definitely speak about. And then just generally planning ahead financially, doing a profit and loss. If you're looking at growing your business, considering the costs and the increasing costs as you increase in sales. Depending on what business you have, it's likely that to generate more sales, you have to spend more money. And it's planning ahead for that and thinking about all those different variables, whether it's staff, office space, labor, materials, whatever they are. So it's a lot of it is about planning. And I think because people tend to think of financially planning as numbers and maths almost, it can be quite daunting. But actually, once, and when I do work with people one-on-one, once they get started, it's actually quite creative. It's quite fun to think about and plan and move things around and see what works. So yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing.
Okay, perfect. And regarding that, do you have any advice to people on how they can get up and going with building the cash flow forecast for themselves?
Yeah, there are a bunch of free templates available online. I have one available. I think it's like a 10 or so. It's literally a sheet that you fill out with all your information, your inflows, your outflows. Meet with someone, a finance professional, and go through what that might look like. It's always good to brainstorm with somebody else and kind of bounce ideas off. They may point you into things that you've kind of forgotten about and not paid attention to. I say, if anybody here is nervous about finances or their business generally, dive in. Like with anything, any kind of growth or change, there's going to be a steep upward curve. And once you've come over it, then it's like, what was I waiting for? Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot co-sign that enough. I think we've all had that experience where we've procrastinated on something for literally weeks, if not months, and then when you do it, it's not that bad. Finances is, at least in my business, that's definitely one of those areas I have that with a lot. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go for another question from the audience, and this is from Christina again. How do you go about finding your clients?
That's a big question. That's a big business question. I think it depends on your space, your field, what your business is in. And I think I mentioned this to you when was talking. I think a large part of it is being visible. if you exist at home by yourself with this great idea, no one knows about you, and you're not really going to generate a sale. So I think it's being visible, communicating, the problem you solve, and also identifying where and who needs your solution, and being creative with it, whether it's directly contacting people within that company or whether it's individuals. Being creative and collaborating with other people, thinking about partnerships. Someone that I'm working with now, she has a jewelry business, and quite gold and silver is quite expensive jewelry, and there are so many creative ways that you can go about generating income and getting those sales. So she also creates pieces of jewelry for somebody else to sell on her behalf, who is an established, fully well-known business, as opposed to her just selling it from her own store. So think about partnerships and collaboration, networking, communicating your need, writing, even getting yourself out there, doing events and just being present.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure if I've lost you there. Can you still hear me?
I can. Can you see me, hear me?
Yeah, we can see and hear you. Perfect. So this is a slightly different lane in terms of questions from Andrea.
Okay.
And they want to know, what time do you wake up? They asked because they said most CEOs seem to wake up at 4:30 a.m., but she struggles to start her day before 9. Yeah, so is it true that all successful business people wake up early in the morning and get started then?
They do. When I'm really on it and I'm good, I wake up about 6. I don't do 4:30 a.m. I'm trying to. There's this 5 a.m. club that I'd love to get into. But yeah, waking up early, you've most of you heard that no one else is awake, no one's there to bother you. You can get so much more done in the morning. But it's so true. I noticed that as soon as it gets to 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm being bothered. There's emails, there's phone calls, which distract me from what I need to do. And some of them are urgent, of course. So getting up earlier allows that. But that only works if you go to bed at a decent time, and I tend to go to bed quite late. So I go through, a flow where I'm going to bed late, waking up late. But ideally, when I'm at my most optimal, it is when I'm waking up early. Yeah.
Okay. What about the other side of that equation? 'Cause I know some people are naturally more night owls. Do you think it's just as productive for maybe those people to stay up late and work when no one's around to distract them, rather than waking up early?
Yeah, and that's what I do sometimes. I do the same. Sometimes I go through phases where I am up until, dare I say, 4 a.m.
Wow.
When I'm in a real zone. But what happens is that continues as a cycle, because then your time zone is shifted, hasn't it? So yeah, I tend to be on that for a good couple of weeks, and then it's like, okay, I've got other things I need to do. I need to be more external, so let me shift it back to normal times. I think, but the best is early in the morning for me.
Okay. So another financial question for you. Do you have any tips regarding setting a budget for your business?
Tips.
Yes. Any advice at all around the best way to budget in for your business?
I think what I think is quite useful is think about, the fundamentals, what you have to have in place, and then plan for what you want your business to look like. So if you're starting a business, it's like you're not going to pay yourself at all or much, but plan for paying yourself a proper wage. And it makes it easier to get there, because you can see quite clearly what you're trying to get to. Of course, when you start a business, you may not take a salary at all, so you're just covering expenses and maybe making the margin. But think about planning for paying yourself, as well as whatever other stuff you need. Trying to think what other tips. I think actually another good tip may be to research other businesses in your field, and look at what they pay for, and what their business model looks like. You can go onto company's house and just have a look at their accounts, to see how they're structured. It might point out some things that you may have forgotten, or just Google and see what other businesses are doing, and it will help guide as to what you should consider. I found that quite useful, especially if you're launching into a new space that you've not maybe worked in, so you're not overly familiar with the ins and outs of that type of business.
Okay, excellent. And now going to a more practical question from Farah. How do you go about having snapshots of your transactions in your business? I'm guessing this is in relation to talking to accountants.
Snapshots of transactions, as in we're talking about accounting software, or do we mean reporting?
Let's go for accounting software and reporting. So let's just assume that for many people they wouldn't have had to work for an accountant yet, so this is a entirely new experience.
I mean, if I understand the question correctly, you can use, and I think I saw something pop up about type of accounting software. There's a bunch of accounting software out there that's really easy to use, such as Xero, QuickBooks. There's another one called QuickFile, which is actually free. So anybody who's really, grassroots and doesn't want to pay for accounting software, it's quite good to send out the odd invoice and so, and manage, outstanding. But these will be good, especially on the visuals. They make it very easy to see where you stand financially, what's outstanding, what's been put through, or what you've posted onto the system. And they should also, or they do definitely allow you to the status of your business. Or like the question earlier, if you need to get an external accountant to pull that report off for you and have a conversation, explain what it means, by all means. But the accounting softwares definitely provide that information with ease. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Hopefully. If that doesn't answer your question, Farah, please do raise your hand now, or just drop a note in the chat section, and we'll hopefully can clarify that for you. In the meantime, we do have another question from the audience. We've got quite a few piling up, so I'm going to go through a lot of those now. Someone is asking that they are thinking about doing the CIMA, the ACA, or the ACCA. Do you think it's worth their time commitment?
So let me be unbiased, so as unbiased as possible. So I did CIMA. I think the question needs to be, what are you doing it for? What's your plans? I think it depends on who you speak to, how they'll talk about the different accounting softwares. But something like mine, CIMA, is more about managing a business. So you're learning about improving profitability. It's more of a business-wide view to accounting. Whereas that's CIMA, sorry. Whereas ACCA is more technical and going quite deep into the detail of accounting rules and how you go about doing certain things. So someone who does ACCA is much more technical than I am, but I knew from the beginning that I wanted to be more management, look at profitability, taking the business further, and hence why I'm now, I've started my own business. It makes complete sense. Same with ACA. So I think the question needs to be, what do you want to do? What do you care about? What excites you, and why are you doing it? I hope that helps.
Okay, so basically with that one, it is literally understand what you want to accomplish and then work your way backwards, essentially.
Yeah.
A question from Adrian, but before I do ask a question, do you know what Acumen IFA stands for?
Independent Financial Advisor.
Perfect. So Adrian was asking, finding an independent financial advisor who actually serves your best interest has proven difficult despite looking at rated people. What would be the best questions to ask? To find out basically if they're a good one or not.
Oh gosh, that's a difficult question. Yeah, so those people who aren't aware, an IFA, independent financial advisor, is not an accountant at all. They sell, insurance policies. They help sort out your pensions. They'd help with inheritance tax. They're in that space. Whereas, like I said, I'm an accountant. I look at the accounts and help with the business growing profitability. Very different space. Obviously, an IFA earns money through selling these products and services. So it's a known space that there are many IFAs who don't have the best interest of the client at heart because they're focused on generating as much money as possible. So it's understandable. And it's a big issue in the space, actually. And one of my business partners is an ex-IFA, and he's very passionate about the state of the industry. But I think there are some good ones. I'm trying to think what you could ask. There are some people who are generally concerned about educating you as a client on your finances, where you want to get to, and would try to give you unbiased kind of guidance and advice as to what you should do. But I'm trying to think of some direct questions. That's, how do you get the right information from them? I think, again, like I said earlier, I think maybe with the accountant outsourcing, try to get reviews and see how other people have found them. IFAs are very much about relationships, very much so. That's how they get their business, referrals. There's massive network. They all kind of work together. And same with their clients, it's all referral based. So see if you can find other people who have used them, and see how they communicate with you and see how you feel. If it's something you don't understand and they're not putting the time and effort into explaining something to you, then that should be a warning. A red flag. They should be taking time, however long that be, to explain this solution they've offered to you, as opposed to saying this is what's going to work for you, go and take it. And I think that's quite a large gap. A lot of people who go to an IFA to seek some kind of help in an area of their finances don't know much about it, and the IFA doesn't spend time to educate. So I think that maybe is a good space, something to pay attention to.
Okay. Is it fair to ask an IFA for a reference? So if you can actually speak to some of their past or existing clients?
I don't know if they'll be able to share such information.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I don't know if they would. But okay. I think maybe if you can ask people in your space, in your industry, in your community, for them to refer someone that they've used. That might be another way.
Okay. And also, if somebody is looking for financial advice around their business, is it fair for them to be able to reach out to you to get some coaching?
Yeah, of course, definitely. On the business finance, I do coaching. On the IFA, which is obviously, mainly personal finance solutions such as insurance, pensions, I know people as well. So of course, I can refer.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we have another question from Greg. You began to touch on it before, but do you have any specific accounting software that you would recommend? So he mentioned Xero that he said good things about, but have you got any others that you would think people must check out?
Yeah, QuickBooks is quite good. Sage, not as attractive, not as user-friendly, but Sage exists. QuickBooks and Xero, I think, are the main ones that are really up to the times when it comes to user face. And I think another one, like I said, I've just popped it on there in the chat, QuickFile. I recently learned of this one. It's actually free, whereas the other two you have to pay for. Very basic. Again, if you're at the early stages of your business, there's no harm in using something like this. It's quite low level. You can do it yourself. You can figure out yourself. Very easy to set up. Hopefully those are useful.
Okay, and Greg is also asking if he's allowed to connect with you to get some questions around financial literacy. He thinks he's got a business idea, which is linked to that as well. Yeah,
definitely. Sure. Check out my website. I've got there should be a link on there to book something in my diary. Yeah, do.
Excellent. Another question from Lydia. What is the best time management tips when dealing with multiple businesses?
So I failed. I'll tell you where I failed. I failed where I tried to divide my day up between all the businesses. Your brain doesn't work like that. So I'm very much so into the psychology of the mind, mainly applying it to finance education. And your brain likes to, if anybody's here is into psychology, your brain likes to do as least work as possible. So if in one day you're trying to split your time between so many different jobs and switch between, it's too much for your brain to do. If you can divvy up your week, ideally where for one full day you're focused on one project. I use my Google Calendar ridiculously. If it's not in my diary, it doesn't exist. So literally scheduling things into your diary, blocking out time to do work. So say you have something coming up later, blocking out time in your diary ahead of that to do the work ahead of that due date. That works really well for me. And just taking advantage of all these digital apps that are amazing, allowing you to sync with your phone, your desktop. If you have an idea, you quickly type it on your phone when you're out and about. When you go back to your desk, you've got that same information to use wherever it needs to be used. I use things like Trello, again, for note keeping and updating and keeping track of things that are going on. That stuff really helps. It just helps to get organized.
Okay, excellent. Cool. So basically, there's a couple of great some app recommendations in there. Use all the tools available to you and play to your own psychology. Don't try to force yourself. Don't take the hard route. Find the easiest way to make your own life easier.
Yeah, I know if you're anything like me, and I think someone mentioned it here, if you're anything like me where you want to keep busy, you like to keep busy, your brain doesn't like it, unfortunately. So try not to do too many things at once. Try to make it as easy as possible, and just that does mean being very strategic and planning ahead. Set aside time to plan, especially like I said earlier, the night before I plan what I'm doing the next day, because then instantly my day can just start and I can go. There isn't that thinking time.
Okay, so a question from Serena Lambert, and she's asking, where can they find the accountant template that you mentioned earlier?
Can I type it in the chat?
That is perfect. If you could just do that for us. And for those that might be watching this later on video, could you also just say the name of the website as well?
Of course. It's my website, is one, KrystleMcGilvery.com/resources.
Perfect. Is there anything else that people can find there that might be useful to them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of templates on the personal finance side. There's a couple free downloads that get you to think about your personal finances, and same with the business. Actually, there's a free download there that talks about various different areas of your business finance, whether it's profit and loss, trying to seek funding, or just things to think about, along with a personal budget, and getting you thinking about that as well. So there's a few different resources there. I mean, I'm quite on social as well, although not now because I'm off until the end of the month because I'm so busy. But when I'm back on, if you check my Instagram as well, there's lots of lives I've done. There's lots of posts with some guidance and some tips. Yeah, it should hopefully help.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so the next question is from Harriet. Harriet, I'm going to condense this question for time reasons, but essentially Harriet runs a community interest company, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done before they are likely to be generating a revenue. However, while building that company, she is also studying and she's also working. Do you have any advice on what she can do to help herself plan financially under those circumstances?
Plan for just what the ready to launch the business?
Sorry, I did say something incorrectly. So she doesn't have a job right now. So she needs to put a lot of work in and she needs to study. So how is she able, what is your advice relating to maintaining herself financially during this time period?
Okay. So the CRC hasn't yet started. She hasn't got a job, so she's not generating any income. Possibly claiming UC, possibly. I mean, if this is a question about other ways to generate income, is that kind of the gist?
I think it's any advice that you can give in terms of like, how can she keep the lights on, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, there are some savvy things you can do when it comes to finances. I mean, things like renting out, depends on where you live, renting out a bedroom. If you have a car, renting out your car, renting out your parking space. There are online surveys you can do, market research. I remember the first one I did paid, what was it, £100 for an hour of my time. I don't know if you can, still connected?
Yeah, so
yeah. Like, for example, market research, paying £100 for an hour of a time, and then they gave me £100 bonus on top. I mean, that's not bad. So there are a few low-level things you can do. You can get savvy with places such as Craigslist or Facebook, and buy things either really low price or collect them for free and then sell them elsewhere. And again, it depends on how much time you have. And same with, again, this is more business related, but same with grants. If you're a CIC, I guess you're serving the community in some way. There's grant funding available for all kinds of businesses. There's actually an event tonight that I'm going to log into, which is talking purely about grant funding. So I think it's just staying out there, communicating your need, and being financially savvy. If you check out my Instagram, you'll see there's quite a few ideas about how to earn a quick buck. Some low-level things you can do without needing you to, set up heavily, which is always the challenge.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'm going to try and get through some more questions because time is flying. So question from Nikki. The business that they want to start is community focused, and it's not likely to cover costs in the first year. They're currently considering signing up as self-employed to start off with so that they can offset the losses of their income tax from their full-time job. Is that a wise decision?
So it will eventually be a CIC.
I'm not sure if it will eventually be a CIC or a limited company. That hasn't been mentioned. I think it's more about the question of actually no, sorry, it's going to become a limited company one day. Yeah, so they're going to become limited. So right now, is it worthwhile to be registering as self-employed to offset losses in their first year of their company?
Yeah, I mean, if the alternative is not registering at all, then you're just taking that loss and spending that money. Then of course, definitely register, because it is a business that you are trying to operate, and it's a loss. And yeah, definitely, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, and that'll be a way to offset their taxes from their job.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. And the second part to that question, is it possible, or how difficult rather is it to switch from being self-employed to a limited company?
Very easy. Your self-employment, and if I just clarify this, self-employment is about you, the individual. So when you are self-employed, you are providing information to HMRC to outline how much money I can't remember your name, has generated in that period. So this could be from the job that you work 9 to 5. It could be from your own company. It could be from your sole trader work. It all comes together, and it's your income that's analysed and profit, and you pay your tax on that. When you register a limited company, that's a separate legal entity. So you can still be, so like myself, I still submit my tax return as self-employed, as well as having my company, and I pay myself a salary from that company. So remember, a limited company is a separate legal entity. It doesn't clash with the self-assessment. So you'd have that ticking over as normal, and that'll be a separate business registration. And then you pay yourself. This is another conversation in itself, paying yourself from a business, and there's various ways you can do it, but they're two separate things. So yeah, totally not difficult at all.
Yeah, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if you're a director of a company, you do have to be registered as self-employed as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
I haven't seen this question, but you did just open a very interesting kind of worms. So in terms of how you pay yourself from a limited company, we have, very briefly, don't have to go too deeply, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, just to touch on a couple. You pay yourself either as, like I said, a salary, like if you are working a 9 to 5 right now, or if you worked for, like I did, Woolworths, you'd pay yourself a normal through PAYE. So HMRC gets their tax straight away, you get your net income. You can do that from your own company. You can also pay yourself by dividends. There's, tax-free allowance within dividend payments as well. And obviously, you can pay yourself via a pension from the company, and all of these are all about being tax efficient. So there are smart ways you can set up your finances. It's best to speak to somebody in finance about this, because if you are also employed, I'll go back a step. So the decision to set up a limited company, if it's not detrimental to your business for operational purposes, it's good to think through whether it's necessary at whatever stage you're at, especially startup, because it may be more tax efficient to just continue as you are and keep it as a sole trader until you generate a certain level of income, and then you can be tax efficient with it. But yeah, there are quite a few creative ways to pay yourself.
My advice relating to that is to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
As someone who's run a couple of businesses and messed around with all that stuff, it's a headache that you just don't need. So go find someone that is experienced in that. Would be my piece of advice relating to that.
Totally.
Question is from Eduarda. I hope I said your name correctly. I'm putting together a CIC limited by a guarantee, and I need 2 partners to meet the requirements for the number of directors. I think the best idea would be that one of these partners is an accountant, so they can take care of that side of the business. How and where do I find accountants that could run a CIC for a social cause?
Oh, that's difficult. I mean, with that question, what you're suggesting is that this accountant is not heavily or full-time an accountant and has time to also run a CIC, which isn't always the case. Like I said myself, I used to be an accountant, and I'm not doing that anymore because I don't have time. I know, fair enough, I run 3 businesses, but doing both is quite a heavy task, especially if the accountant is, like they would normally be, does quite a lot of the accounting for the business, not just year-end accounts, maybe monthly reporting, etc. It's unlikely they'd have time to commit to run a CIC as well. But saying that, there are accountants that specialize in charitable organization accounting, and you can source them. Like I said, I'm a trustee. I don't know if I mentioned it. I'm a trustee for a charity, but I don't do the accounts as such. We have an external accountant who does that, because that's bookkeeping, that's monthly reporting, but they specialize in charitable accounting, and they're not terribly expensive. So I think I'm not wanting to push you away from that, because you may find somebody, but depending on their commitment to being an accountant, not sure, that will be quite difficult.
Okay. Serena asked, can we join the grant event that you mentioned earlier?
Yes. How can I share?
Okay. While we're figuring that one out, maybe do you say you're not using Twitter social media currently?
Yes. Should I share it on my? I've shared it on my Facebook. I'll share it on my Twitter. Should I do that?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah, if you just send the tweet out, then hopefully everyone will be able to find that.
I'll do that. I think. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So on to the next question. Do you think financial literacy / personal financial education should be taught in schools?
Yes, of course. Yes. This is going to evoke some kind of passion and emotion in me. Yes, 100%. I think I did an article on LinkedIn the other day talking about Pythagoras and us learning, which, I did it, and I studied it at university, maths, not accountancy. So yeah, sure, I studied that, but the gap that it leaves when it comes to personal finance and the effect that you can see it has on everybody today, yes, definitely we should. Okay. I could talk about this forever, but I won't.
I had a feeling when I read that was going to strike a chord.
Yeah.
Okay. All right then. So a few other questions that have come through. Cool. What strategies have you seen people use to increase their revenues for their company?
I think we touched on. Are we there?
Yes. You know what? We did touch on something pretty similar. So I'll actually ask anybody in the audience if you've seen any ideas of how that you've seen to increase their revenues. Please just also mention that in the chat, just for other people to learn from. What is the best way that somebody can increase their financial acumen as an entrepreneur?
So I think definitely reading, connecting. Like I said, I'm on Instagram, and there are a bunch of people on Instagram who are talking about this stuff regularly. There are, free live events. People share information regularly in their posts. Zoom events. I think it's so accessible. If you literally just type it into Google or type it into Instagram, you'll be inundated with a bunch of information. Or do short courses. There's so many ways. I think that the main thing is to be active and to seek it and to want to learn. Like I said earlier, a lot of people are afraid when it comes to finances, and I totally understand that. I think what's required, and people tend to not realize, is a lot of bravery for you to be like, right, I'm going to go and learn this stuff. I don't know it. I'm nervous about it, but I'm going to learn it. I think it's just that commitment. Even if you do something low level, like commit to, I don't know, say an hour a week, depending on how much work you have on. So just reading a bit of a book, or searching something online, or checking out a post on someone's page, it will all compound, and make you more financially savvy.
Okay. We are beginning to come to the end of today's session, so if you do have any more questions, please do put that in the chat now so we can address that before we do conclude. But in the meantime, before Krystle, we did speak about setting budgets for a company. But how would you go about setting financial goals for an organization?
So setting goals, I think, and I'm sure I wrote an article on this actually. But there are a couple of things to think about. First, it's understanding or being very clear on what you want for the business overall. Why do you have the business? What are you trying to achieve? Are you looking to sell the business? Are you looking to have it to pass on to children, or whatever it may be? What do you want to achieve for the business? And then breaking that down. So if we think about, depending on what kind of business you have, thinking about sales, how much you need to generate, how much profit you need to generate, what space do you want to occupy? Being creative about the different type of services you can offer, diversifying your income, revenue streams and ideas. And then, yes, I did do an event on this the other day actually. Then it's, I'm just remembering, listen, there's too much going on. So you've got the big picture view and understanding where you want the business to go overall, and then it's just literally breaking it down bit by bit. So you might have a big 10-year vision, then you break it down to a 5-year vision, and what you want to get to is literally 1 year, and what do you need to set about doing for the next year. Break it down month by month till you get to right now, and then you're very clear about the steps you need to take to get to next week. Where are we? Tuesday, next week Tuesday, the week after Tuesday, and eventually that will compound and you'll get to that bigger goal. So with something like, you know, want to achieve a certain, I don't know, profit amount, it's breaking down exactly what that looks like, and that goes back to creating a financial plan, and whether it's a budget forecast, and breaking down exactly how much you need to achieve by when, what are your goals, how many sales does that need to make, and then, like I said earlier, thinking about the costs that you will need to incur to generate that kind of sale. And literally just taking time and going through it with a fine-tooth comb, and then getting to where you are right now. And that's the main thing.
Okay. Question from Adrian. Do you have any good introductory books that you would recommend?
Yes, there are a few. There are some old goodies such as Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't know, it's quite a common one. That's, you know, getting you to understand business and finance. There's another book which is, actually I'll talk on the finance old ones first. Think Rich and Grow Rich is a good one. The Richest Man in Babylon. There's another book which I really like, and this gets you to think kind of outside the box and understand success. Malcolm Gladwell, Outliers, is a good book. I don't know if you've read that, Claude, you're nodding.
Yeah.
I love that book. Yeah. It gets you to understand success and how it works and who is successful, and it's quite nice. Yeah, someone loves Malcolm Gladwell. I'm currently reading Blink, but struggling to get through it with all the work to do. But Blink's another one as well. All about trusting your instinct, which goes back to, I can't remember her name. You know, talking about being in business with somebody and wanting to get out. Blink is a good book to read. It's all about, you know, your instinct and making decisions. So there's some good books, I think.
Okay. So Andrew, you might not be able to type them out just for time reasons and staying focused, but just to repeat them for you, it is Outlier, we have Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, and was there any others that you mentioned?
I think I mentioned. Not necessarily
yeah.
finance, but yeah, good for thinking and business decisions and trusting yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, any other questions I'm seeing in the audience? Somebody is asking the very direct question of how can they find your Twitter link?
Okay. So I'm not very good on Twitter, so forgive me if my Twitter is not very exciting. Let me get it. I've only recently started using it, so let's.
That's fine. Do you know what your handle is right now?
It's popped in the chat.
Perfect. Okay, so make sure you give Krystle a follow there as well.
Yes, and I'll post the event afterwards.
Yeah, and I think this looks like it might be the last question. This is one from me. So when I did speak before, I had the pleasure of really hearing more about your story. And one thing that really stood out to me was, I guess, the reasons why you do what you do. So could you just tell us a little bit about what motivates you to run the businesses that you do?
Yeah, I think, and I think I'm learning the power of your own story and understanding where you come from and why you're here. So growing up in social housing myself, hence why my BFD initially is for people living in social housing, a single parent home, etc., etc. No one went to university, so I was the first. I was the first in my family to buy property. I was the first for quite a lot of things, and I think it was, you know, then I went into accountancy and I was earning quite a lot of money, more than I think a lot of people in my family. And, you know, at first, as you would expect, you know, earning good money, you're quite excited. I was working at a PR agency where everybody dressed up every day for work, so it was all very glam. But quite quickly, I realized that people in my hometown, I guess, weren't as financially savvy as I was, or making the right decisions like I was. And, you know, people close to me made bad decisions and had to borrow from me, but then wouldn't pay back. And we got into some uncomfortable situations, which I'm sure many people have experienced. So it was along that journey that I realized actually I need to spend time and I need to commit myself to educating people, because it's a huge issue. And the more I read about it, so I dived into reading and researching about this space, it's a It's a global issue. It's not London, it's not UK, it's a global issue. And there's so much to be done. And then when I dived into the social housing aspect and the amount of research that's gone into that, it just shows this is a great way I can target, you know, a really big, important demographic who would definitely benefit from this education. So yeah, after traveling for a year and a half, I came back and I was like, this is what I'm doing. I dived into it. So it's a massive passion piece. Just rewinding a bit, wanting to help that certain demographic, but not wanting them to pay for it was the biggest challenge I had. And, you know, how am I going to tackle that? So with my BFD, the initial client is social housing associations. So they will be the people that will be funding, educating their tenants. So the tenant or, you know, the general public is not paying for it. And there's a bunch of other clients in our model, but that's the main focus. The people who need it shouldn't have to pay. So yeah, as much as I could do that more and more. That's the main thing.
That's excellent, and I think that's a fantastic way to wrap up for today.